Thank you very much for Sheila's amazing introduction. I was hoping you weren't going to bring that up. What was worse about it, well, 200 points might sound quite good. I don't know how familiar you are with Pointless. What it means is you've left up at the first question. They've just introduced you and then they're clapping you off. It was awful. And the first question is an easy one for the celebrities not to look too thick. It's a gimme. And what made it worse, it was a radio special. And mine was like a really easy question. I could answer it now. But in the moment there, I don't know, I just panicked. And as we were shuffling off, Ken Bruce just said to me, I can't believe a DJ didn't know that question. That was the worst thing for me, that I'd been trolled by Ken Bruce. It was a low point, but a marvellous story to bring me on, so thank you very much, Sheila. So yeah, I've been working in commercial radio for quite a long time, actually. I think it is about 19 years, and there have been a lot of changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk for a bit, and then we'll do some questions, and then I'll let you go and have lunch and get out of it. So I won't keep you too long, because I know this is probably the worst slot. I don't know why they've actually got me here anyway. You've had very highbrow talkers, and I essentially play Nickelback for a living. So I'm not really sure why I'm meant to be here, but we'll see what happens. So there've been quite a few changes. There've been loads of changes since when I first started in radio. One of them is social media. It's changed everything you do, changes everything I do at work and also outside of work as well. I use Twitter a lot and Facebook for the show. Twitter I really like. Twitter's a very strange thing because obviously their catchphrase is bringing the world together. But anyone who spent any time on Twitter will know it's not actually about that. It is the ability to let most people tell Piers Morgan they think he's a dick. And I think that's only a good thing, personally. The thing is, also, people can say things to me that are sometimes a bit odd. A couple of weeks ago, I got a tweet from this woman called Karen, and she said, I've got some tickets to come and see you live, do stand-up. I'm really excited. Not my husband, Ken, though. He can't stand you. LOL. And people put that at the end of social media messages where LOL, basically saying, you know, I know what I've just said is actually quite upsetting, but if it makes you feel any better, I laughed out loud. It doesn't bring me any comfort. I don't really need to know about Ken, whether or not he likes me. Fuck Ken, you know? LOL is like this, the new no offence. People used to say that a lot when they would say something to you and then go at the end, no offence. And it doesn't work. I can't go on the radio, you know, and go, geez, Nicola Sturgeon, not even after 5 pints. No offence. That doesn't make it any less offensive. It's still a horrible thing to say. And the big thing that's driven this is the internet. The internet at its best has given everyone a voice. At its worst, it's given everyone a voice. And some people are just too stupid or thick to be allowed a voice. I've never had, no, it's true. I'll prove it to you now, right? It is true. Radio gets more complaints now than we've ever had before. And there is no way that radio is more offensive now than it's ever been. This is not true. You know, in fact, depressingly, I think it's, if anything, it's too safe at the moment. It's become safer, which is ridiculous. When you think about how much free content is online now and how important freedom of speech is, and yet on the radio, I think actually radio is very, very, in certain places, I think it's actually quite toothless. But we get loads of complaints. The reason why is because you can go online and complain now. It's instant. It's too easy. Years ago, I'm sure you can remember this, Sheila, the old system worked the best. If you didn't like something on the TV or radio, you had to write a letter. That was amazing because it took ages. I wrote a letter the other week, right? I was exhausted by the end of it. My hand was aching. Then you've got to go and find the stamps in your house. You never know where the stamps are. Then you've got to go and find a postbox. By the time you found the postbox, you're thinking, I'm not actually that offended anymore. Sod it, I'm okay. Whereas now it's immediate. And everyone's a critic. Oh, we all do this. You think about the last time you went on Amazon, I'm sure it was in the last couple of days, you look at all the reviews, don't you? You're not interested in the 5-star, the 4-star, the 3-star. You're streaming down, looking for a 1 bonus. And then you read that one, don't you? And you think, if you think about that, it's kind of odd. Why would you give anyone's opinion the time of day who spent 20 minutes to write a 5-paragraph review of an electric tin opener? It's the same way with TripAdvisor as well. I love TripAdvisor. I think it's a great idea. Now none of us don't go to any restaurant or go to any hotel before we're looking on TripAdvisor. But if you spent more than 5 or 10 minutes reading some of those reviews, it just seems to be very, very angry, entitled people moaning about some very small slight. It is. I took my kids to Thailand over Christmas, and we were going to go backpacking around Thailand, and we were going to go and stay in this place. It was an elephant sanctuary in the middle of the jungle, and it looked brilliant. And I went on to TripAdvisor, and there's all these amazing 5-star reviews, and I saw this one-star review, and I thought, oh, what did this guy see? And this guy had actually put on there, you need to be aware the Wi-Fi is intermittent. You're in the middle of the Thai jungle. Why am I going to be trying to stream Middlemarch or something like that? So yeah, there have been all these changes that I've seen over the last couple of years, and I like using social media for the show. It's brilliant now. It's a testing ground. I can tweet something today, and straight away I can see if it gets lots of interaction. I think, oh, this would be great to talk about tomorrow morning. If it gets nothing, it won't be mentioned on air. It's a kind of work in progress. So I think it's brilliant. Radio shows now are expected to have a life online, but also after the radio show as well. And I think I've really embraced that. I think my show's got the better of it. I've learned more about my audience, what they like, what they don't like. It gives me a lot of metrics that used to be closed off from presenters and programmers would get in focus groups. I now have a focus group in front of me every morning, and they are very honest about what they like and what they don't like. And I think that can only make a presenter, that can only make us better. I think that's a brilliant thing. I've also always thought that radio was the original social media. I think it connects people who are into the same thing, whether it's the same kind of music or whether it's something like Talk Sport or LBC. I think that actually people always talk about how social media has owned something. I think radio's done that. I think sometimes it's lost a bit of that over-worrying, or not even over-worrying, just trying to embrace new media in the worst way. I think it's done in the worst way when you hear radio stations say that terrible phrase, can you go online and like our Facebook page? It makes me cringe. Why would they want to go and do that? The great thing about online content and content itself is the good should rise to the top. It's a meritocracy. If you want us to like your Facebook page, put something interesting and engaging up there. That's what you should be investing in, not thinking we need likes. You've got to work out what are you doing to try and get those likes. So I think the advances in social media have actually, I know you're here talking about seeing radio differently and all these different things now. Radio has shifted a lot from when I first started, and I think it's in a really interesting place at the moment. I actually think radio is more important than it's ever been because there's just so much media now. There's so much data. It's just overwhelming trying to get through the day now. I think radio it has a purpose as a filter and a curator to try and navigate your listener through the day, whether that's a breakfast show, whether that's me, Chris Evans, or Classic FM. I think it actually is fulfilling a really important need. I remember years ago when things like Pandora came along and Spotify, I thought the days of a radio DJ would start to be numbered because I thought, why actually would people want to just be force-fed music in the morning that they might not like some of those songs? If they could choose it themselves, why would they need to listen to someone like me? But actually, if you look at the figures, radio's getting more and more popular. And I think that's true, that actually it's become more important. People still want some kind of filter, and that's what radio does for them. It's also, with all the new media and all these different advances that are happening now, I feel that actually there's a lot of us that are becoming more and more alienated. And although we live in the digital world, it's also disconnected us as well. It's connected us in very obvious, exciting ways, but there's a disconnect there as well. And radio is still this really important connection. People still deeply feel it. When I meet listeners out and about, they come up to me and they will remember like a story that I've told them. And I love that. Stories are really important to us. And that's one of the things I like about radio and stand-up and now kids' books is storytelling. Sometimes I think of a story and I'm not sure whether I should share it on the radio because it puts me in a bad light. And those are often the best stories to say. A couple of weeks ago, my producer, who'd been with me like 5 years, was leaving. And I was off on holiday that week and I wanted something to arrive in the office that would make him laugh. And he has quite a sort of sick sense of humour. So I thought it'd be quite funny to send him a funeral wreath with the message, "You're dead to me." Yeah. Like I said, some stories, I'm not sure I should be sharing them. So I rang Interflora. This is where the story gets odd. I ring Interflora and I go, I need to send a funeral wreath. And this woman was very helpful. She went, let us know the name of the funeral director. We'll take care of everything for you, sir. And I went, oh no, it's not to a funeral director. It's actually just someone who's alive. There was a really uncomfortable gap. She went, I'm not quite clear what you mean. What do you mean to somebody who's alive? I went, yes, look, I know the guy. He'll find it funny. He's leaving. I'd like to send him a funeral wreath to where he works. She said, can you just hang on a minute there? Can you just puts me on hold for like 2 minutes? Then someone else comes on. Hi, it's Ian, the manager. Can I just check what it is you're trying to ask for? And I went, I'd like to send a wreath to someone. Now, it sounds really odd. They've got a great sense of humour. They find this really funny. And he was like, well, what will the message say? Well, it would say, you're dead to me. He then said to me, the man from Interflora said, I think this is an inappropriate idea. And I said, you don't know this guy. How can you say it's inappropriate? He said, Interflora want no part in this. Interflora, they're pulling out of this, and he hung up. So a couple of hours later, I told my wife, I said, I feel really bad now. I don't even know what I was thinking of trying to order. It's a terrible idea. What if someone else in the office who was going through bereavement and saw that? What if he didn't like it? What an awful thing to do. And my wife said, do not share this on the radio. People would think you're a monster. And so I did share it on the radio. People, it was split. Unfortunately, it says a lot for my audience. The majority of them thought it was a very good idea. And in fact, one florist, independent florist, rang me and said, if you ever want to do this again, here's my number. So there's no other, other than stand-up, there's no other place where you can have those pockets, those little moments. And to give you a flip side, you can't always do the funny stuff. And the thing I like about radio is the light and shade. And the realness, that's what I'm really, really interested in. And if you are going to be real on the radio, that means you can't just be their friend who's constantly trying to make them laugh in the morning. That's tiring for me, and it's even more tiring for the audience. I always think the show after there's been a tragedy or something like that are when you're really tested as a broadcaster. They are. That's when you can really work out if you're getting better or not, is in those. You can do the funny shows and stuff like that, but the way you're really tested, how you really talk from the heart are in those moments, because you're stripped away from a lot of stuff you talk about. And when you're on the radio 5 days a week, it can quite easily get into a pattern. And the day after the Westminster attack, I start the show and I said, I don't really know how to say how we all feel. You're probably feeling the same as me, kind of stunned, numbed. It's depressing, but also trying to hang on to the good that we are in the world. When you saw the good at the police officers and the MP that rushed to the scene as well, that's who we are. And I said, that's all I've got to say. I don't really know what else to say. Just saying that, we've got so many calls from people who are like, that's how I'm feeling. Then half an hour into the show, I got this amazing email from a Met police officer who wanted to remain anonymous. This is amazing, right? He was emailing in. He'd worked, he was there in the afternoon, and he wanted me to thank the members of the public, the people of London, this great city. He wanted me to thank them because they've been so kind, and they were asking how all the other injured casualties were. This was a police officer who'd been there, probably frightened himself, writing the next morning, him trying to work out what he thought of it. One of his colleagues had died, sharing that he wanted me to say thank you to people. So I read his email out, and we tried to get hold of him to come on, but he didn't want to, because whenever a police officer speaks these days, they get a lot of adverse criticism as well. But we read it out on air, and it crystallised how we all felt. People wanted to share in that. And I said to my producer, Richard, don't do any other social media posts today. It's not quite right. It's not how people are feeling. Just put his letter up. That's it. You know what the great thing about it was? In 11 years I've been on that show, it's our most popular, most shared media post ever. It was something where, and that, I couldn't have done that with radio years ago. We couldn't be able to share and to carry something on like that. And so that's another example of, I think, how you can use social media to do other stuff, and it amplifies what you're trying to do on the show. The other thing that I've been obviously doing, if I've been working in commercial radio a long time, is I've been doing promotions for a very long time and sponsorships. Before I got into radio, I used to sell S&P, so I kind of know it from both sides. So I've done lots of different things. Some of those have won awards, and then I've done some terrible promotions as well. I remember years ago we did a promotion with the Welsh Tourist Board. And it was to give away a weekend trip to Port Talbot. Yeah. You try getting people excited about that at 8:10 on a Friday morning to work. We got an email from someone saying, why are you doing this? I live in Port Talbot. It's a shithole. Why would anyone want to come? It's a thanks sales for the Port Talbot trip we had to give away. But then there's other things like the breakfast show's been sponsored by Wix for the last 6 years. And you might think on paper, how on earth do you make something like that sound interesting and sexy in the morning? But actually, we can do quite a lot with them. Every Christmas, we do a big live show in front of a theatre about this kind of size. And we have a live radio breakfast show pantomime. And about 2 years ago, we had David Tennant and Shane Ritchie. Shane Ritchie was in EastEnders then for about the 8th time. And the Wix built the Queen Wix on stage for him. Next week, we're going to do, every year, we do something called Breakfast, which, as the title might suggest, is a festival around at somebody's house in the garden. This year, because we're doing it, and we always have a band, because you can't have a festival without a band. This year, we're doing it with Kasabian, and so we wanted to make it bigger, not just listeners' homes, open up to schools and community centres, places that needed a makeover, because our sponsors, Wix, would do that. So a lot of schools entered, as you can imagine, they're strapped for cash. So we're going to a school in Harlow, next Friday morning with Kasabian, who are going to be playing live in front of a load of kids. How amazing is that for those kids? I'm excited. There was a cap on the numbers. Kasabian said we could only bring 50 people along when they didn't know where we were going, just to kind of control it. When they found out it was a school, they've opened it up now to Kasabian have asked for 400 school kids to be there. So it's going to be like the coolest special assembly in the world. My job, my boss is still worried, because Kasabian have been live on my station quite a few times, and every time they've played live, Tom, the lead singer, has sworn heavily. Now, my boss is saying that I'm still going to have to do the whole speech that I have to do when I'm bringing them on. Normally, like, you know, this is going out live on Absolute Radio. There might be some bad language, so we can't have bad language in front of 400 school kids. And if you're listening, there will be complaints. We've been in a lot of trouble. So they're putting the performance into delay, which they normally do at night in the evening, but at 8 o'clock in the morning in front of 400 school kids. So I don't know what's going to happen, so tune in to hear that one. So if you've got any questions before I let you all go out for lunchtime, I've waffled on quite a bit. If you guys got any questions? You just want to go to lunch now, don't you? Yes, at the back.
How do you see radio is going to change in the next... Sorry, microphone. How do you see radio is going to change in the next 2 years from your perspective?
Just the next 2 years?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Normally they ask you like
2
next
or
5 or
5
10 years. I love that. Really long term, but also a little bit short term. Do you know what? I think that radio, like everything, is changing so much now. I've just written a kids' book, and I was talking to them about how they think publishing is going to change in the next 5 or 10 years, and even they aren't sure. So I think what's been really interesting, also one of the things I found really interesting, is I listen to more podcasts now than I do radio. That area I found really interesting, and I think because if there's a topic, what I like about it is long form and immersive. And like when I interview a guest, that's going to be edited down into like a 7-minute, 2-3 minute chunk or something. Whereas I like it if it's a guest I'm interested in, you can hear an hour of them. And I'm just about to launch next sort of 3 or 4 months 2 different podcasts that I wouldn't be able to do on the radio. So I think podcasting is, I think, a really interesting area. It's getting bigger, and I think that is, I think, hopefully going to challenge radio a bit more as it does get bigger to invest again into content and not quite so much bite-sized stuff, which is why I like listening to speech radio. Because actually I find that sometimes music radio is, and that's what people want about it, but I still think there's a bit of space to have a bit more content. If you flick around to a lot of breakfast shows, there's a lot of homogenization and very, very safe generic radio, and I don't think that's a good thing. I should do, because it means less competition for me if they're all inane, but it shouldn't be that. It used to have all these really, really interesting different kind of talkers and personalities at breakfast time, and the evening on this country as well. Now that it doesn't feel that it's like that anymore. So how do I think it's changed? I don't know entirely. But I'm kind of interested to find out. I'm trying to evolve how I do radio as it's evolving as well, and that's what keeps it interesting as a presenter, is trying to, because it's hard, because there's so much change. Trying to know what your strategy is for it is really, really hard. You're kind of making it up as you go along, and hopefully you're trying to do it in the right way. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Any more? Yes?
Do you have a favourite song?
Do I have a favourite song? I get quite angsty when people ask me that, because it gets like an OCD in me, because I can't stand even making top 10s, because music means that much to me. It's like asking, do I have a favourite limb? It really is like that. So there are songs that come along that I play to death, not even just on the radio show, but you know when you get a song, I like this, and then you hate it all of a sudden because you just had too much of it. So at the moment, the one I really like is, Kasabian, we've got this new single out. It's called You're in Love with a Psycho. It's this really dark, poppy love song, which I think is really honest, because we're all in some way a psycho. And I keep playing that over and over again. Even my kids are going, not this bloody song. I should be saying that to them. So at the moment, it's that. What it never is Nickelback. But I have to play that every day. It pays the mortgage, okay? Don't judge. Any more questions? Yes, you at the back, sir.
Yeah, you said earlier you trailed things on social media to see if people had an interest, and then you've just sort of made the point that you feel that things are becoming a bit safe. So do you feel there's a danger that by doing that you end up sort of following rather than leading, and perhaps you're not taking the audiences down places that they didn't know they wanted to go, but they would be interested in if you did?
Well, that's a fair point. But that's up to me to try and, I think the only reason I can still be popular or get an audience or grow an audience when I've been doing it for so long is to not do that. And so when the audience stops growing, that's when you've got to look at what you're doing. And also I get bored very easy of what's going on the radio show. I try and move stuff on quicker than the audience do. And I like the fact that I'm not entirely sure what tomorrow's show will be. And so I kind of like that. And I need to challenge myself. That's why I went back to stand-up 4 years ago, and why even doing something like writing a kid's book. I want to get out. I think whatever you do creatively, whether it's broadcasting or whatever, the moment you're in a comfort zone, that is the death of creativity. Nothing good comes out of a comfort zone. It's pushing yourself out of it. And that's the same with everything you've been talking about today. In terms of seeing radio differently, it's actually making sure that we are pushing ourselves out of that comfort zone. Even if you don't know quite where it's going, it's really hard in life, isn't it, to embrace uncertainty? But there's something also quite powerful about that as well. That's a great question. Thank you. Any more questions? Yes?
Who or what makes you shout at the radio?
Who or what?
Who or what?
Oh my gosh, I'm terrible for that. I think radio people are, and I'm aware. Do you know what? I've always thought it'd be really bad, but amazing. If you watch Gogglebox, would it be amazing if there was like a radio version of Gogglebox? Honestly, I think I'd just quit ever doing a radio show. I think it's probably the things that some people irritate about when they must just get fed up with me. I think it's when I find it. I'll tell you one thing I find really irritating, when there's a dull caller on the radio, and at the end of a really, really just nonsensical point, the presenter will go, "Thank you very much for that, Tom. What a great call." I always think, no. And I will always say to my listeners, if we're halfway through something, this story is going nowhere. Does it get better? And then they will either go, "Oh, I'm really sorry, actually, I've been overthinking it." Because I'll try and do that politely, and even when I'm going nowhere, I'll go, "I'm going nowhere with this, let's just play a song." I've always vowed that you should be, and that's when you get a great call, and 9 times out of 10 they are. However, I also think sometimes the terrible callers, when they're really bad, are some of the best callers. I remember we were doing this competition with Sky. It was to give away like a VIP package to go to the Open, and we were doing this really dumb competition. Basically, we would play a famous golfer hitting the ball, and they had to guess how many seconds before it landed. This guy comes on, and it was Tiger Woods here is driving. We hear the sound effect, and I go, "How long do you think it was before that ball landed?" And this guy goes, 8 minutes. And I went, "Do you mean 8 seconds?" He goes, "No, 8 minutes." 8 minutes. People still talk about that now. It just happened like 4 years ago. When I see golf, I keep thinking, I worked it out. He hits the ball at something like 122 miles an hour. If he hit it for 8 minutes, it would land something like 23 miles away. Even if you'd never seen golf, it doesn't even sound right. And because now we can't fix competitions, we never did. That idiot won the trip. Anyway. So that makes me shout at my own radio show, stuff like that. Right, I think you guys are all ready for lunch now. Well, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed today. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.